Okay, so as Kristen said, we're going to actually start off in another world. So even though we're going to talk about a mobile world eventually, we're going to start out in the stratosphere. Okay, does anyone know who that was or what that event was? It happened late last year. Yes? Red Bull, right. Do you know his name? Okay, it's Felix Baumgartner. Okay, so he's an Austrian. That's Felix Baumgartner. He set several records late last year. And what he did was he became the first man. Actually, well, there's a couple records. First thing he did was he had the highest flight in a balloon up to outer space. And what he did was then he got to outer space, and then what he did was he jumped from that craft down to the Earth. So then he became the first person to, or the highest person to jump from there down to the Earth, and he also broke the speed of sound by doing that. So very impressive. And I found that very inspirational, and so you're probably thinking like, well, what does that have to do with mobile research and mobile world? Well, the one thing about the clip, I don't know if you noticed, and if you know the background a little bit, actually Felix spent years of preparation to take that first step. And even when he was ready to take that first step, you saw, I don't know if you caught it in the clip, but there was that little bit of hesitation to get going. But once he did, he stepped off, and we'll check in later on to see how Felix did, in case you didn't see it live. And I think we're in the same boat now with mobile research, because it feels like, we've been hearing, and today there's been some great speakers, and I'm going to summarize a lot of what we heard today too, about this is a mobile world. We're ready to jump into it, but it feels like we're really hesitating to take that first step. Or if we've taken that first step, we're hesitating to keep going. So what I want to do today is count down 10 reasons for you why I think it's time that we take that first step into the mobile world. And hopefully by the end of that, it will inspire you to go ahead and do that if you haven't already. Okay, we know nothing new is easy, and we need to think back a little bit too. And I was around for the time, so I'm old, but I'm not that old. But I was around for the time where we went from mail to phone, and I was there for the internet revolution. And it was a painful time, and for those of us who went through it, there was quite a change that happened then. And I think someone else spoke to this earlier too. I think we have memory loss for some of this stuff that, there are times where we've had these changes. They've revolutionized things, and for what happened basically was that we came out to be better for it after that change happened. And all we have to do is make sure that we keep moving forward to be able to make sure that we can learn from that change. So a couple ideas I have for that is that if you are going to make this change and take this step, and it's inevitable, it's happening, here's some things you can do to make that step a lot easier and a lot more painless. We can, use a 10-minute survey instead of a 30-minute survey to take that step. Create a survey that's going to work on a mobile device. So it can't be that same internet survey that you've done and throw it on the mobile device. It's got to be designed for that. Use a 5-point scale. Okay, that's anchored on the ends. Don't anchor in the middle point, so you make sure that it's easily read on the device. And then one other thing I'd say is that make sure you test the heck out of it with your internal team, because you want those mobile respondents to have a really good experience the first time they do it or the second time they do it, or they're going to abandon us. Okay, we know consumers are spoiled. You think about some ways that's manifested itself for the marketers out there. The device on the left, for you guys who don't know that, that's the Coke Freestyle machine. So that's where you can go get your Coke flavors. You can get almost infinite number of flavors for a soda. In the middle is Birchbox, so you can have customized toiletries for yourself. I'm kind of a car guy. I'm from Detroit, so I love the last example there, which is the Mini. And I don't think I've ever seen a Mini that hasn't been customized out there. So I mean, we cater to customers, and in research, we need to do the same thing. Some research has shown that about 70% of consumers are using their mobile devices in the aisle. And so that's an important cue for us where we need to be there too with them in the aisle. And we need to make sure that we're conducting research on their terms and not on our terms. So that means we make, that's where mobile comes in and allows them to participate in research while they're there instead of us forcing them to go back home and connect with us on their PC or through their phone or some other way. Okay. How do we know that respondents are being authentic and showing their authentic selves to us when we're doing research? I think we've all been interested in neuroscience-based research because we feel like that's going to give us the answer, that even though our respondents are telling us something, when we look into their minds somehow, we're going to understand the truth. We found though that mobile research might be a way to get there faster, because we're still not sure yet how neural research based science is going to come out. And my colleagues a year or two ago did some research with some respondents. And what we found was that, and I think we all did this, I mean, I'll admit to this too, is that, there's this Facebook version of yourself or your social media version of yourself, and there's what you realistically like. So I don't sit around in an armchair with eating Cheetos, but, I'm not exactly like my Facebook self. And we put on a persona out there for our friends and family because we don't want to look silly. What we found, though, with the research is that when people are interacting through their mobile devices, they're actually acting and responding much more authentically. And what we got out of the research, what we're supposing is that, number one, those devices, that your smartphone device is always with you. It's like an appendage of yourself. And so because it's that, it's so natural for you to just respond that way. Number two, because it is so natural and it's always with you, you don't hesitate to respond. So it's kind of almost like subconscious. And so when we do ask you to respond that way, you're not going to have that filter there, and you're also not going to have that latency where, again, if I do research with you now and I ask you, hey, what'd you do in that store? You have to wait till you come home and respond to me. By that time, you could have formed, a really well thought out and really pithy answer to what I asked you about, but that might not be the authentic answer. And in research, of course, the holy grail is we want authenticity. Okay, I actually feel like mobile brings us full circle, and let me explain what I mean by that. If you look at the history of research over time, with the advent of the PC and the internet especially, it's actually distanced us further and further away from the consumer. And I feel like mobile is going to be that opportunity to bring us back there. So if you think about it, I can do research now. In fact, with our company, we do research globally 24/7, but I never step foot in another country, let alone be face-to-face with a respondent. And it's really interesting for some of the younger people. I had experience of that in the past. Some of my younger colleagues have never even actually probably seen a respondent and what a respondent looks like, or who is that person, who are those people. So I really think that mobile allows us to get closer again and come full circle to the respondent. And it allows us to be obsessed again with the point of experience. What I mean by that is, because of mobile, we can not only ask and understand in the moment, but it also allows us to observe in the moment. And some of those ways might not be readily apparent to you, but if you think about the mobile devices where we can do things like we can track, through geolocation or through GPS or geofencing or the mobile analytics or mobile tracking, not only do we have to ask our respondents questions, but we can be observing what they're doing too. Okay, I'll be honest with you because, our company dabbles in mobile research, and we do other types of research too. And right now, I'll admit, it is a little bit more expensive to do mobile research. And so that also is a convenient excuse for some of the people who are hesitating right now to say, you know what, I'm not going to jump into mobile until the price point comes down. And I can understand that. I'm cool with that. I'm a frugal person. But let's go back again and take a little historical lesson and think back again when these shifts happened, when the shift happened to the internet from mail and phone. I don't know if people remember, but back then it was less expensive to do mail research and phone research. Stamps were cheap. It was very easy to do, and the internet was more expensive. What happened, though, was that savvy researchers thought, you know what, let's start building online panels because that'll be a way to bring the price point down. And let's create some, great software to be able to make it very easy and very convenient and very quick to get responses from people. And lo and behold, what happened? People stopped answering our phone calls and stopped responding to our mail surveys and moved online. And if you think about it, it's just inevitable what's going to happen with mobile. I mean, if you look at the trends and you look at the sales trends, I mean, the pace of mobile, of smartphones have already outpaced the PC by now. That trend's going to continue. It's never going to go back another way. And whether we like it or not to, or whether we ask respondents or not, they're going to respond mobily. That's most convenient for them to do that. And so if these are the trends and this is what's happening, it's going to be inevitable that the price point's going to come down on mobile, and it's going to come down really soon. I mean, there's smart people out there already. I mean, there's smart people here and there's smart people everywhere working on this problem right now. We're seeing mobile panels, mobile communities, mobile surveys that are making it very easy to do mobile research. And so, again, I just feel like it's this inevitability that the price point might be an issue today, but I feel like very shortly that's not going to be an issue anymore. Okay. So we've done a lot of research on mobile, and a lot of other people have too. And so far we found that the results we're getting are that mobile is valid, and we're getting very similar results to other types of research we're doing. There's going to be those skeptics out there, and I understand them. They're saying right now that mobile might not be 100% valid because it's not fully out there in the general population. And I would rebut them by saying, you know what, let's be honest about research. Research is never 100% accurate, and there's a lot of bias in the research we do right now. I mean, if you think about it, we're all guilty of creating kind of fatiguing surveys, poorly worded questions. We don't do the greatest job with our sample frameworks. And so, you know what, you have to kind of take that with, that's kind of the name of the game of mobile research, and any research in general, is that, you know what, the purists can talk about it, diss it a little bit, but they can do the same with other types of research too. And eventually, mobile adoption will become really prevalent in the general population. And if you think about it too, mobile has also led us to some new groups of people who have been underrepresented with some of the ways we do research now. For example, younger people and males. So if you're really worried about research right now, it's again, I go back to this idea about taking baby steps, and I liked that someone else brought this up earlier about the whole idea about your beta phase. If you think about it, that's what technology companies do. They just get something that's pretty good, get it out there, get it into their beta phase, and then they start learning. They get that kind of rapid feedback or that fast feedback of what's going on. So I would recommend doing the same with mobile, is like get it out there, get something good out there, and then really listen and learn to be able to keep moving. And that pretty soon we'll find that we do have a lot of mobile fluency. Okay, I read an interesting statistic the other day that people spend on average 2.5 hours with their smartphone device a day. And most of those interactions are very, very quick interactions. So they're things like, you go on to check your, what people said on Facebook, or you do a little quick video game. I know I do that. Or you just want to see what's going on or answer a quick email or whatever it is, text with someone. And I think as researchers, this is a golden opportunity for us to insert ourselves in that moment. So, you're not going to be able to do that with a 30 or 20-minute survey, but you can do that if you do something quick and stress-free and make it very rewarding for people to do. So that's where mobile is going to lead to some new ways of interacting with respondents, to be able to take advantage of those quick little moments. A couple of the things that we've been doing and that I've seen out there are things like video chats or quick little video, asking people to provide quick little videos of us about what's going on in their lives, or maybe even things like live ethnography, where you can connect with them live through their mobile device. We have a pet. This is an example from one of our online communities. It's a pet owners community. People have dogs and cats, and we ask people, every once in a while, like if there's something cool that your dog did, or you took them to the vet, or some cool behavior that they did, could take a quick little video of it and upload it for us. And so that's great. I mean, that's something they could do just in their in-between time, be able to upload it real quick. And there we go. We got some really great feedback. It didn't need to be some kind of big process to do that. We just made it quick and easy for them. Okay, so in the developing world, we know that their adoption rates of mobile are higher than the other parts of the world, the non-developed world. And so I said developing world. I meant the developed world. Sorry about that. But I would argue that, that our mobile fluency has suffered a little bit for that. And I think it's because that we got really, really very attached to the cable and the landlines and the DSL and the ease of getting service. And I love the talk earlier about how you kind of got to be a little scrappy in the non-developed world, where that, it's not so easy to do this kind of stuff, and we've been kind of spoiled this way. And for the other parts of the world, the smartphone is like a survival tool for them. And I think we can take a page from that, where that we can build up our mobile fluency by treating it like that. And so that's where you got to take every advantage to do things mobilely that you can, so that it does become some kind of smartphone survival tool for yourselves. And by doing that, as researchers, we're going to build up our mobile fluency and be able to relate anywhere in the world with people who are responding via mobile. Okay, smaller is better. This goes back to the point that we can't keep doing surveys like the way we've been doing them now. I mean, 20 to 30-minute surveys are just going to keep getting more difficult to do. We're going to need to abandon the lengthy surveys. And one of the ways we've thought about doing that is that, and being able to take the interim step, to something we're calling modular mobile surveys. So last year we did some research on research, where we took a 30-minute AANU survey. And this was in a partnership with SSI and a beverage manufacturer, and this was all about frozen beverages. And what we did was we took that same 30-minute survey, so we ran it online, which we had done it before, but we did it again. And we also broke it up into 3 10-minute chunks. And we used data fusion to be able to analyze things on the back end to put it back together again. And we found some very interesting things. We found that when we broke it up into these bite-sized chunks, that number one, we got very valid results. So the same results we got from online, we got for mobile. Number two, what was also very interesting was that 70% of the respondents who took those 3 chunks, they were offered the chunk 1 so they could take the first 10-minute survey, and then we gave them an offer like, do you want to continue and take the second 10 minutes of the survey and the third 10 minutes? And lo and behold, 70% of people took all 3 of our modules. Very encouraging for us because, one of the scary things going into this was like, oh my God, we're going to have to triple every sample that we do, and we found that's just not the case. Okay, I'm getting to my last point of the countdown, which is a really important one. It is right now a mobile world. Again, you guys saw some stats earlier. There's another one I'm going to throw out. By the end of 2013, it's predicted that there's going to be 1.82 billion smartphones use in the world. Okay, and if you think about what's happening right now, I mean, a lot of companies have seen this. We've seen this too, is that, on average, anywhere from 15 to 25% of people are responding mobilely. And so this is where I would encourage you to get fluent in your survey designs to make sure that you're designing things to be device agnostic. If you think about the respondents out there, the young consumers, especially the younger people, they're very device agnostic. They'll flip from their PC to their tablet to their smartphone to whatever's handy, and they're able to easily adjust and fluently go from one device to another. As researchers, we need to do the same thing. We need to make sure that we're fluent with that and making sure that when we're designing our survey or online qualitative or whatever we're doing, that it's going to work across device so that we can be there wherever they are. Okay, so we're going to go back and revisit Felix one more time, just to kind of show you how he ended up, and then we'll finish our presentation. Okay, so real quick clip there. Felix was very successful in his thing, and he's grounded himself in mobile research. And so Felix was very successful with what he did, and you'll see that Felix is ready to also adopt a mobile world. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
So, Bob, go ahead and have a seat. And
Okay.
I wanted to bring up our other speakers from earlier in the track. We're going to do a little impromptu panel discussion. Janet, sorry for springing this on you. I brought it up when you were out of the room, but I know you can do it on the fly. Nothing like an impromptu panel discussion, right? That's all right. I have a mic. We're going to be passing around. Seth, I'll let you hold the mic. Missing Frank. Is Frank here? Frank?
Yeah, don't see him.
No? David. All right. So as I mentioned, we're running a little early on the track, and lunch is a little delayed, so we're going to do sort of an impromptu Q&A. I know some of you didn't get an opportunity to ask some of our speakers questions earlier on, but I wanted to kind of kick off the Q&A session with talking a little bit about what some people are now calling the fourth leg. So we've been talking about this three-legged approach today, this social, local, and mobile. But there's a lot of discussion now in the marketplace that there's this fourth leg that basically is going to consist of apps and services that sort of anticipate the user's need based on all the data that we're getting from these gadgets. And looking at new products that are coming out like Google Glass, for instance, those kind of wearable computer devices that sort of have a full context about consumers. They know where you are, they know what's around you, they know the temperature, they know the sound around you, they know how fast you're moving. So there's sort of an unparalleled amount of data that we're going to be dealing with. And I wanted to kick off by sort of asking the panels, do you think that we're heading more toward a passive data collection opportunity rather than active? So, we've been focused so much on primary research data, but we're beginning to get all this ancillary sort of passively collected data now that really, presents, like Bob said, more opportunities for understanding how people are authentically responding in their environment. How do you guys think that's going to sort of change how we do data collection or how we interact with respondents on a project or case-by-case basis? Seth has a microphone. You're not entitled to start the discussion, but
I will take advantage of this to say that, yeah, I think we're moving more toward passive data collection, but I sure hope that when Google Glass or whatever delivers predictive stuff to us, it does better than the autocorrect features in the text messaging and stuff.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. I think the whole industry of, sensors being embedded in our clothes, in our glasses, maybe in our bodies somewhere, definitely is a wave of the future. And I do think that this whole issue of, what we do with all of that information, sort of drinking from that fire hose of information, is really going to be the issue going forward, what we do with all of that information. But it is absolutely, definitely coming.
And one last thing I'd add is I think it's definitely coming. I agree with my co-panelists, but we have to really be conscious and concerned about privacy and ethics in that area.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up that point about privacy and ethics. One thing we found is that you do have to really make sure you're really cautious about that and make sure that that's really understood. One way we found to combat that a bit is that we also are in the online community space, and the combination of mobile through online communities is very powerful. Number one, for that issue, that kind of privacy issue where that you build those relationships with them. And number two, back to that authenticity example I gave you guys, actually the people are even more authentic or responding more authentically when they're in a community, because it is kind of a opportunity when it's not, when you're not known who you are. If you want to be able to make yourself a little bit anonymous, it allows you to be a little more authentic in that environment too.
Cool.
I have just one thing to add, since I made a kind of joking response to start off, which is that the real interesting part will be not what these devices might suggest to me, but what they do with the fact that I'm sitting next to Janet and the collision of our data, my data with her data, to find the commonalities, and that could be an opportunity that related to going past a store or maybe related to location, time of day, the people around us.
On the point of passive and active, I would say it's both. I see us doing a lot of passive listening, but I see that creating opportunities for clarification. And I see then using many different devices that give us the ability to go out and actively engage. What's nice is that we're listening before we're asking, as opposed to just asking and then listening, right? So in many cases, the way that structured surveys are created with some of our clients that we see, everything's predefined and set up, and they think that they know what the customer wants. Preceded by passive listening, it gives us a really nice set of headlights in terms of understanding where we should direct our questions. And we've had conversations with virtually all of our clients now where we said, when you think about the research process, what might make sense is if you start with 2 rounds of open-ended questions saying, hey, tell us what you think about this product or service, and tell us like you were telling a friend, which gets us to understand from their perspective what's most important to them and puts an emotional layer on top of it as well, which gives us some priority. And then we use that to kind of drill into and passively, or I should say actively ask specific questions as a follow-up, as opposed to these very long, arduous surveys that people are confronted with.
Right. Great. I have a couple questions that tie in with that, but before I ask another one, I wanted to kind of open it up to the floor. I know we had to skip the Q&A period for a number of speakers. Any questions from the floor sort of on any of the presentations we saw today, or things that you're thinking about when it comes to slow-mo? Questions? Anyone? You're so overwhelmed and dazzled with the amount of knowledge that you...
Too much data.
Too much data. Can't take it all in. Well, let me ask oh, we have a question somewhere? I saw someone pointing. Oh, perfect.
So I think that now that we're starting to get like a different kind of output out of like analysis, we need to become familiar on how to interpret this new information, and it's going to be key from all of you to help us get familiar on how to interpret and use that information. So it was more of like a comment than a question.
Okay. Sir.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all of this insights. And my brain is like going at 1,000 miles an hour past marathon speed. My biggest question is, how can we use this in the healthcare space, where it's channel marketing, where your consumers are physicians, are institutions, are the government? Any insights, any work that you've done, and how do you get that to senior management?
sounds like a great question for Janet.
Yeah, I didn't hear all of that question.
Apply all this in the healthcare space.
How do you apply all this in the healthcare space? Well, I think that, you raise a really important issue, and that is that, in certain businesses like healthcare, there are so many issues that you have to grapple with, like regulatory, for example. I know that, our clients are really, really concerned about making sure that they're not stepping over the line in terms of asking things that are inappropriate or illegal. And I think, the really important thing in healthcare is to really understand the space and to really understand the different communities that you're going after, and to be extremely targeted in how you attack those communities, because how you get information from a physician, for example, may be very different from how you attack getting information from a patient, maybe a very sick patient. And then also, how do you get information about, reimbursement from payers that, so I think, one of the things I talked about is, sort of the method of engagement. And I think, in terms at least of procuring information, the method of engagement is really, really key. And it's really key that you understand the different segments and target them appropriately based on sort of all the issues around it. But I think it's really important to be smart in the space before you go out there and start trying to do work in that space, because there are landmines out there for sure.
I'll give you a tactical example. We do a bunch of work for pharmaceutical companies, and one of the things that we do is monitor the social space for adverse events, and we're able to listen, across the board in the proper manner, trained by FDA, et cetera, for our clients to identify, AEs and engage, as appropriate. And, it's obviously a regulated industry and pretty conservative, and because of that concern, a lot of pharma companies really are wary of getting active in social. Yet, for all of our clients, regardless of product, I think our AE rate is around 2%. So we're helping to change the mindset to get a lot of pharmaceutical companies a little more active in social media listening and marketing.
Let me take a shot with my own examples, noting that I'm a technologist at heart, but talking about the research function. So these are examples that I learned from other people. For instance, you can mine social to find out about emerging epidemics of health problems. But Google's doing something even more interesting, which is mining search queries, because before people start posting about how, oh, I have the flu, people search on flu symptoms. So it's a very high velocity way to find out information. I know Stuart Schulman, who's with Vision Critical. He talks about mining social information and collecting feedback in other ways to find out what the most effective anti-smoking campaigns are. So Stuart and colleagues he was working with in academia, and I know that Carol Haney from Toluna might very well be in the room. She's done similar work. Well, Stuart talked about the reaction generated by a woman in a commercial, an anti-smoking commercial, with a hole in her neck because it, had to bypass for throat cancer or lung cancer or something. You understand the effectiveness of these kind of campaigns. And the last example, I've talked to a number of groups that are mining doctor-patient dialogue. For clinical medicine, the client there might be a health insurer, it might be a service delivery organization, to understand how the dialogue between a physician and a patient influences the healthcare outcomes. There are loads of great examples in healthcare and clinical medicine.
Perfect. Great. That's all the time we have for questions today. Thank you guys so much. Great presentations, and they'll be hanging around, I'm assuming, during lunch. If you have any other questions, track them down and try to connect with them directly. And I'm going to turn things over to Greg, who has a few announcements for you all. Thank you.